Hello everybody, I have started the next series in the Realm of the Elderlings series that is the Rain Wild Chronicles, starting with Book 1, Dragon Keeper. So must have been 6 months ago is when I finished the last Realm of the Elderlings trilogy, which was the Tawny trilogy. Excellent. So far, every single trilogy in this series has been some of the best fantasy I've ever read. So I come to this series very excited. However, the talk sort of in the Realm of the Elderlings, subreddit and people who read it, friends of mine on BookTube who have read it, is that it is not the best. It's not bad, but it's not quite to the snuff of the other ones, especially because the final series, the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, is really fantastic. So I came in with some tempered expectations that I think really helped my read of this book. Now, it is definitely not my favorite. I'm going to say at the beginning, by the way, I should say here at the beginning, at this point in the Realm of the Elderlings, I feel like you're either in it or you're not. So this is going to be a spoiler-filled review. So if you have not read this book yet, go read it and come back. Or if you haven't read any of the Realm of the Elderlings, what are you doing? Go start reading it. Farseer Trilogy, Assassin's Apprentice is the first one. You will be so happy that you did. But I'm just going to talk about plot points and spoilers from the beginning. So Dragon Keeper is a story that is sort of a mix of Joseph Conrad's The Heart of Darkness with William Golding's Lord of the Flies. It's this trip to a mythical place deep in this terrible jungle that's full of dangers. But at its core is this group of children that are about to turn adults trying to figure out interactions. And she kind of sets this up, she being Robin Hobb, sets this up in a very brilliant way, I think, because these children not only are just children and so inexperienced, but they're also those who have been touched by the Rain Wilds, which means that they are kind of like deformed elderlings. So they have, the growths, so they have the scales and all that kind of stuff. And that really gives an added benefit of innocence, especially to the main character, Thymera. Oof. I never verbalize words while I'm reading, so let me look. Thymera. I think I did a pretty good job there. She especially is very sort of world-wise in some ways, but also very ignorant in other ways because of being raised as this person who's been touched by the Rain Wilds. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and I love Lord of the Flies and Animal Farm and sort of those kind of group dynamic classics, and so I think it's interesting that Robin Hobb is doing that here. I also think the conception of dragons so far in the Realm of the Elderlings is so interesting because they're not these perfect beings of light and goodness, which they and glory as they normally are in fantasy. There's a bite to them. They're written, because she writes from several different dragon perspectives, with a sort of arrogance that is off-putting, but they still have sort of the splendor that is intriguing. So even the way that Hobb writes their perspectives and their thoughts and how they interact with humans is both off-putting and attractive, which is how they're supposed to be. And it's really a brilliant, skillful storytelling device to do that for us. And again, really unique, which is hard to do in a fantasy genre trope like dragons, which is so ubiquitous. Similarly, Robin Hobb's excellent writing shines forth in the relationships of the two main Bingtown characters in this book, which is Alice and Cedric. So Alice grew up as sort of a second daughter in a poorer trader's home, and she's looking for something to do with her life. She's not necessarily beautiful, but she's not ugly. She's not mean or anything, but she's not overly gregarious. So she's having a hard time finding her way in the world, and she's obsessed with dragons and this scholarship. And she really, at the bottom of it all, wants to find a life where she can be free to live her scholarly pursuits. She finds this ability to live her scholarly pursuits by marrying a man named Hest, who's this incredibly gorgeous, or I should say handsome, whatever. I think they describe him as handsome. Handsome, strong, seemingly well-mannered trader from a very rich family who actually tries to woo her at first, and then eventually she's like, listen, I'm not looking for a wife in the traditional sense. I just need someone to look after my home and eventually have a baby so I can further the family line. And it becomes pretty clear later on that is because he is a gay man. He's basically looking for a beard. And Alice is a good mark for that, which she is. Talking about Hobb's skill, when that offer comes to Alice, we rejoice with her. I remember reading that and be like, this is great. Yeah, you don't have to like really care that much about, Hest or whatever, but like he'll buy you the scrolls you want and you can do all this stuff. Like, so it seemed like a great deal to the reader as much as Alice. But as she gets into this relationship, she sees that Hest is also incredibly cruel, not in like a physical sense, but in an emotional sense, how he deals with her, the pressures he puts on her, and sort of the lackluster, not lackluster, I shouldn't say, the frustrated side of their physical intimacy, because they still have to have that side of it because he wants to produce an heir. But obviously he's not into it, and I think it's clear he channels a lot of his sexual frustrations for being in a society where he can't be sort of an openly gay man into that sexual relationship. So it's this harsh relationship there, and it gets even more complicated when we learn that Alice is one of her best childhood friends, Cedric, is a secretary to Hest, and it becomes very clear that they are lovers. And both of them are frustrated with their outlook. But Hest is making this attraction turn into bitterness, that he can't have what he wants, but he's fighting against this society, while Cedric is more sort of in it for the relationship and for Hest as a person, and he dreams of having enough money to move away and find a place where they can be together. So it's a really complicated relationship. The interesting thing, though, is we don't get a lot of Hest. The actual, like, point in this love, it's not really a triangle, but like two sides, because there's no love down here, but like the two sides of this complicated relationship, we don't get a lot of Hest's reaction. We learn about him from Cedric and Alice. And that's interesting because, like when you learn about abusive relationships in the real world without knowing the person who is abusing the people, this person becomes a monster. Hest is an absolute monster, and you cannot understand why Alice or Cedric are infatuated with this person or have latched onto this person, which is so true in the world. But when people do know the abuser, they make all kinds of excuses for them, which is what Cedric does. And really, it's not ignorance, it's purposeful ignorance of Hest's cruelty, both towards Alice and himself at times in this story. All of that, I think, is brilliantly done and very, very complex as far as the human characters and their interactions. So there's a lot of positives I've said about this book. If it feels like I have been saying all this in sort of a this but kind of way, because I have. Overall, I thought this was just an okay book that could have been great, but was just a bit too long. Took a little too long to get going. Honestly, in this 500-page book, mostly what happens is the parties get to the right place. Tessinga, a new Rain Wild settlement where the dragons have hatched, and they start their journey. That's really all that happens in this series. And so often, because Hobb is a great author, I didn't recognize that is how slow it was going. But whenever I did, it was really not necessarily off-putting, but really discouraging, that like I want more out of this. And as much as I talked about all this complex relationships, like all that stuff I mentioned develops incredibly slowly, and I think too slowly. The same sort of complex relationships and interpersonal dynamics are present in all of the other Realm of the Elderling books, but also with much more, not even plot things happening, but story moving. And I just don't think it's achieved quite as well in this book. I also don't understand why Hobb chose to not incorporate as key perspectives people who are in the Rain Wilds that we know and love. And this could become clear later in the series, but there are brief cameos of people we know, Althea, Brashan, Malta, who I love, but they're not main perspectives. And I liked when they showed up, but I hated that I didn't get their perspectives. These are people I have loved through the other series, and I'm just sad that, like, Malta especially is not a main viewpoint in this book. She's pregnant, and so she's sort of put off to the side. I'm sure it's more complex than that, but that's sort of how it feels. I wanted Malta on this journey. I think just having that one major character there would be so huge for allowing me to be more emotionally invested than I am. Also, Hobb has developed this weird tick, and I don't know if she's just doing it purposefully in this series, but this odd tick of picking up a story or a conversation or a scene in which, during that scene, we get a lot of, not flashbacks, but just like we are told what happened in the past. And it starts off in the prologue where we are in the mind's eye of Sinatra, who is one of the, will become a dragon. And she's remembering all the things that like took place up to her being on the beach. And so it's about her being a serpent and coming up the river. And it kind of brings up us up as the reader to where we're at in the story, like where we left off from the Liveship traders to where we are now. And so in a prologue, it makes sense because it kind of brings you up to that. But she does it even to the last chapter of this book. She does it quite a lot where like we'll pick up a discussion and Cedric will be out on the deck looking at the dragons, and then he'll think about the past couple days, and that's how we find out about the past couple days. And I found that a kind of annoying tick because it undercut a story that already didn't have a lot of tension in it, knowing that we were in the future we were at a point and we were learning about the past where obviously nothing major could have happened because Cedric is still on the deck of this ship. So in a story that was already lacking for tension and sort of narrative thrust, I think that undercut it a little more. Now that said, I've already started the second book. I finished this last night and I started the second book this morning. So like, there's enough thrust for me to want to read it. And as I said, Hobb is a incredibly good author, and I really care what happens to Alice and Thymera and the dragons. So all of that has worked, and I'm sure there's going to be some really great mythology that is coming in this series. But overall, I have to say that this book is a if you like X. It is enjoyable in many ways, but if I didn't have the immense weight of the rest of the Realm of the Elderlings up to this point, I think I really would have maybe not disliked, but kind of been unimpressed by this book. But as it is, there's enough of that other stuff to really keep me going, and I love Robin Hobb anyway, but this is definitely my least favorite book so far by her. So let me know in the comments down below what you think of Dragon Keeper. Let me know if it gets better. Obviously no spoilers, but I've heard a lot of people say they enjoyed the rest of the series, even though it's still sort of on the bottom of the list. I want to know what you think. Let me know. And also, I don't say this often enough, please like and subscribe this video. It does really help with the algorithm. I know it's annoying for YouTubers to say it, but it's the truth. As always, first in, last out.